I started writing this book before anyone had heard the term Me Too, and I guess I had vaguely heard of Harvey Weinstein, but I certainly didn't know anything about his history as a sexual predator. So the occurrence of those events starting in late 2017 really occurred more or less in the middle of my writing the book. And for a moment, I was kind of overwhelmed by these Me Too stories that were coming out every day in the newspaper, and was trying to figure out how I should incorporate them into the book. And I think the answer is that the Me Too movement generally, and maybe the Harvey Weinstein case in particular, sort of illustrates the kinds of the changes in public attitudes that we have, especially with respect to non-consensual behavior, and shows in real time how people, how views are changing, how the law is struggling to sort of keep up with these seismic changes in public attitudes. At the same time, I think there's a kind of concern that there's almost a Wild West quality about the Me Too movement, that it's so unregulated, that these accusations have flown so fast and furious that people's careers are ruined, people's reputations are ruined, and there's a concern that maybe we've gone too far too fast. Now, the focus of my book is really on the criminal law, and the criminal law is the most coercive kind of social technique that we have, and we really should use it only in the most limited circumstances. So it doesn't directly address the virtues or vices of the Me Too movement, but I think it tries to say that we should distinguish between those that form of misconduct which is most deserving of criminal punishment. Some of it might be more appropriate for civil enforcement, and some of it perhaps should just remain sort of unregulated and subject to social stigma and other informal kinds of sanctions. So I think there's a tendency sometimes when we talk about the Me Too movement to sort of conflate it, to put it all together, to say it's all the same, that it's all the function of the same kind of social dysfunction. And I think that's an overstatement. I think part of the purpose of the book is to try to identify, well, which are the most serious kinds of sexual misconduct, which are appropriate for the most serious kind of sanction, the criminal sanction, and which kinds might be more appropriate for less serious sanctions. So I have a whole chapter on sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is mostly dealt with as a civil wrong in the United States. In a couple of other countries, including Belgium and France and Israel, they do have criminal penalties that are at least potentially applicable to what we would regard as a civil wrong in the United States of sexual harassment. And one of the questions I ask in that chapter is, should we consider the criminalization of some of these kinds of behaviors, which we currently don't treat as a crime? Should we consider the possibility that maybe we should criminalize them? And I think in some cases we should, but I think we need to do so very carefully, lest we over-criminalize the kinds of behaviors that we might treat more efficiently and more appropriately through other kinds of civil sanctions instead.